All right, so now let's suppose we were told that the price of the good is $10. And what we're going to use this for is we're going to want to figure out what the labor demand curve is for this firm. So let's just start out with a single case. Let's say that the wage equals $10. And we want to know, what does demand equal? So if you remember, the firm is going to choose the amount of labor employees such that wage equals price times marginal product of labor. And so what this means is that we're looking for somewhere that's 10 equals 10 times the marginal product of labor. In other words, we're looking for a point where the marginal product of labor equals 1. And so, what we're going to have here is that means that the labor employed by the firm is going to equal 1. Okay. And so we just basically, to figure out the whole demand curve for labor from this firm, we just keep doing the same thing. So I'm going to just create a little table down here. Let's just call this, let's have this as wage and then labor demanded. So let's sort of say this. When the wage is $0, we're looking for the point that 0 equals 10. So actually, let me be a little bit more clear than this. So wage equals $0. Well, we're looking for the place that 0 equals 10 times MPL. In other words, we're looking where MPL equals 0. And where is that? Oh, well, that's when I hire 7 workers. Then we already did it. When wage equals 10, we want to hire 6 workers. And we keep going forward and forward. So let's now do wage equals 30. Well, then it's 30 equals 10 times MPL. That means that the MPL is going to equal 3. And we can see that this means that L is going to equal 6, right? Just referring to the chart. We already computed out our marginal product of labor over here. And so we just need to figure out where our marginal product of labor matches our marginal product, our desired marginal product of labor, in this case 3. And I think I said 6, but I meant 5. And so at 30, we'd hire 5 workers. And so 10 times 6. When the wage is equal to $60, well, then we need 60 to equal 10 times MPL. And so here we have that the MPL is equal to 6. Now here is just one little thing we have to be careful about, is that we have sort of 3 separate points whose MPL is equal to 6. And so what we have to do is it could be any one of these. So in other words, L could equal 4, or L could equal 3, or L could equal 2. Here the firm is sort of indifferent between these 3 points, right? We could think about it being perfectly elastic for this like little segment. And so we just write out on our demand curve 60, and then we'll just fill it in basically 3 times. It could either be 4, or it could be 3, or it could be 2. Okay, so what will the firm actually hire? Well, it depends on, of course, labor supply and where labor supply crosses the labor demand curve. Okay, so keep going forward and forward. We can then look at wage equals 70. And this is just saying 70 times 10, oops. 70 equals 10 times the marginal product of labor. In other words, the marginal product of labor equals 7. And so there we look at our chart. We see we hire 1 worker. And then finally, if we have wage equals 80, well, then we're looking for 80 to equal 10 times MPL. And so then our MPL equals 8. And if we consult our chart, well, we hired 1 worker when our marginal product of labor was 7, but now, we need our marginal product needs to be higher. And in this case, it means we hire no employees. And so here L equals 0 because we're off the chart. And this is our our labor demand curve from this firm. We have a mapping from the wage to the number of workers they want to hire. And so all we have to do this is we took that marginal product of labor we computed out before, and we set our marginal cost, our marginal cost equal to our marginal revenue. Or in other words, we set wage equal to price times the marginal product of labor. And so it's kind of, I think, a good exercise to think about what will happen if there's sort of shifts in both the wages or the marginal product or the price. For instance, imagine that wages increased. Let's say they increased by 10%. What would happen to our demand curve? Well, we can actually go through and compute them, but you can also think about it as being just a shift to the left in demand. In this case, an increase in price, that would be a shift to the right in the demand curve. And as the marginal product of labor increases, that also be like a shift to the right in our demand curve. And so, yeah, so all demand was doing is demand just comes from these firms optimizing, and this being their optimizing condition.